Good afternoon, everyone. It is Wednesday, June the 17th, 2020, and this is your weekly encouragement from the Psalms. This week we're looking at Psalm 16, which says, "Preserve me, O God, for in you I take refuge. I say to the Lord, you are my Lord. I have no good apart from you. As for the saints in the land, they are the excellent ones in whom is all my delight. The sorrows of those who run after another God shall multiply. Their drink offerings of blood I will not pour out or take their names on my lips. The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. The lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. I bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the night also my heart instructs me. I have set the Lord always before me, because he is at my right hand. I shall not be shaken. Therefore my heart is glad and my whole being rejoices. My flesh also dwells secure. For you will not abandon my soul to Sheol, or let your Holy One see corruption. You make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore." The psalmist here is talking about the sheltered life. Now, when we talk about sheltered lives today or living a sheltered life, we normally don't mean it in a positive light. I remember one farmer in Ireland in particular who always looked down upon people who, believe it or not, didn't take baths or showers out of a bucket in their backyard. This is the way he was raised, poor, having no running water in the house, and they would apparently, as children, have to go out every morning in the 40 or 50 degree weather and bathe out of a cold bucket in the backyard. Everybody else that didn't bathe this way lived a sheltered life in this man's mind. So he had a very negative view of a sheltered life. The psalmist here in Psalm 16 does not take a negative view, but actually takes a positive view of living a sheltered life. And he says in verses 1 through 4 that a sheltered life, first of all, has its commitments in the proper place. First of all, a sheltered life, a positively sheltered life, first of all, is properly committed to God. He says, "Preserve me, O God, for in you I take refuge." Now, this may seem obvious to good church-going people, but I think it's a call really to take a careful gut check of yourself. Do you really believe that all joy, all goodness in life only comes from God? If you have this in the proper perspective, it seems like everything else will fall into place, that God gives us good things, and if we use them according to the way that he calls us to use them, then real and lasting joy is entirely possible in this life and even necessary. So the sheltered life, first of all, is a life that is properly committed to God. Secondly, it's the, and he even says that here in verse 2. He says, "I say to the Lord, you are my God. I have no good apart from you." Do you believe that? So proper commitment to God. Secondly, proper commitment to others. Verse 3, "As for the saints in the land," saints, those committed to God, we don't believe, as the Roman Catholics do, that saints are extra special Christians. No, they're just simply Christians, those devoted to God. We are all saints if we are living our lives trusting in Jesus Christ alone for salvation. So he says, "As for the saints in the land, they are the excellent ones, in whom is all my delight." Now, here's the problem, and we have addressed this before. We will address this again. The problem with saints is that we oftentimes don't act so saintly towards one another. How do we get past this? How do we move on from this? Those of you that have children know that oftentimes your kids will have runny noses, be dirty, say inappropriate things, run around embarrassing you from time to time, nitpicking at one another, constantly bickering, fighting, complaining. You get my drift, and you can see that I've experienced all this, even as recently as this morning. The thing to remember with children is that yes, they can be whiny, and oftentimes even in churches it seems that there is even a select group, a couple of people always that are whining constantly. In those moments, in those times when you feel like you've had enough, that's it, I'm done, I don't want anything else to do with those saints, those Christians, you have to remember, as with your children as well, it's not who your children are, it's whose they are. I oftentimes will remind my children, somewhat sarcastically, but nevertheless I mean it, if it weren't for the fact that I was their father, they would be out on the street in no time at all. It's not who they are, it's whose they are. I think this is helpful in remembering when it comes to God's people as well. They belong to God. And so who are we to cast aside? Can we not bear with them because of whose they are? And the answer is, of course we can. The third commitment, I think we can say, in this sheltered life that we live, this good life, if you will, is that there's a commitment, first of all, to God, secondly, to God's people, thirdly, there's a commitment to turn away from godliness. Notice how he describes those people who are not saints, who are not God's people. He said, the sorrows of those who run after another God will multiply. What a wonderful reminder to so many of us that desire other things. He's saying the things that ungodly people desire, that you and I sometimes desire. They multiply sorrow. It's a reminder, I think, that sin promises so much. Sin never delivers what it promises. He says, their drink offerings of blood I will not pour out, or take their names on my lips. Referring to worship here. The committed one, the follower of Jesus, these true Christians will never seek to worship anything but God himself. Again, shows us the importance of proper worship. So, the sheltered life, first of all, proper commitments. Commitment that finds good solely in God. Secondly, clings to God's people and bears with God's people. Thirdly, declines all other worship. Get these right. And then the second thing we see that comes from the sheltered life is contentment. And boy, do I need to work on my contentment. I don't think I'm a very content person. Verses 5 and 6 show us the contentment that comes with proper commitments in life. He says, the Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. You hold my lot. In other words, an allotment, what you've been given in life. He goes on to say, the lines have fallen, verse 6, for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. David here is referring to the dividing up of the promised land. If you remember in the Old Testament, in Joshua, the 12 tribes of Israel go in, they take possession of this long promised land, and then it's divided up amongst the 12 tribes, or really the 11 tribes. The Levites did not get a portion of land. They got a few cities here and there, but no proper land to speak of. And David, I think, is saying here two things. First of all, whatever has been given to them, they are to be content with. And secondly, and even more importantly, you notice that there, it's not, again, who is, it's who is dividing the land. Notice it's God that divides the land. He says, it's you that give me my lot. And so there's a sovereign aspect to this. It's because of who is giving it that we are okay with what we are being given. Some tribes were given more land, bigger allotments, better land than others. They were okay with that, at least for a time. And this is a lesson to us very clearly that we need to be okay with what God gives us as well, with your lot in life. It doesn't mean that we snooze. It doesn't mean that we get lazy. We work hard. We preserve what we have been given. We even seek to oftentimes expand what has been given, but with God in mind and using it for His good. It's Him that gives it. It's us that must be content with that. Also, notice here in verse 7, there's contentment with how God is leading. Bless the Lord who gives me counsel. In the night also my heart instructs me. We are to be content with God's direction in our lives, and that means the scriptures, God's written word. We are to be content with the written word. We're to be content with the scriptures and how they guide and lead us. Finally, the sheltered life or the good life emphasizes proper commitments. It shows that it gives us contentment in this life if we find our good in God, if we cling to God's people, if we decline other and all forms of ungodliness, that leads to contentment. And when we are content in the Lord and with what He gives us, we find that there is great confidence there. I love the way he puts it in verse 8. David says, I have set the Lord always before me, because He is at my right hand, I shall not be shaken. Now, forgive me for being maybe overly simplistic on this point, but let me put it like this. If you want to shake something, or even somebody sometimes, you can't shake something that is across the room from you. You can't shake someone that is in another county, right? Grab hold of whatever it is and physically shake. You have to have it close to you, in other words. You can't shake something across the room from you. It has to be right there, close proximity. You might even say intimately close to you. This is what David is saying here. You can't be shaken by the world. You can't be shaken by fear and pestilence and disease and all these other things in life that come to you that are bad, because you are even closer to God, and God is even closer to you than whatever it is. Cancer, heartbreak, devastation over sins that other people have committed against you. You cannot be shaken by that. Why? Because God is closer to you than everything and anything that this world or sinful people can bring or do to you. Let that settle in for you. Let that resonate in your mind. Let that be the thought that guides and leads and builds you up to trust in God more and more. Let that be the foundation of your confidence in the Lord. How do you know this? Well, again, you'll see a common thread in all these videos that I'm doing, and hopefully all of my teaching and instruction here. It goes back again to this wonderful incarnation that God has done in this world. God has become a human being. He has taken on human flesh. And he does this in part so that he can understand more and more, better and better, who we are as human beings, so he can be that close to you. Jesus understands what it is to be betrayed. Jesus understands what it is to be mourning the loss of loved ones. Jesus knows what it is to be disappointed in people and individuals, in others, in life. Whatever it is you're going through, he gets that. He's that close to you. And the more and more that you understand that, the more that you seek to live your life according to these principles, the more your confidence grows in him. He gets it. He understands. He knows, and he will not allow you to be shaken. Christian, put your faith in Jesus Christ and trust that he is closer than anything to you that this world or anything else can throw at you. Let that be your confidence. Grow in your faith. Trust in that eternal truth more and more. And as the psalmist says here, this beautiful inheritance will be yours. One day, we have much greater things to look forward to in this life. Go now, trusting in the Lord Jesus Christ. Be blessed and be well, and we'll talk to you all again soon. Take care.